Jason Oakley. Please join me on the stage here. Jason is saying that competing is a team sport. So, and competitive intelligence is a team sport, and it shouldn't be just one guy like Jason doing it, but there's a whole bunch of people. So, yeah, Jason, excited
That's
to hear
right.
this. Stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, how to compete and win as a team. So my name's Jason. I'm Senior Director of Product Marketing at Clue. And so Clue is a competitive enablement platform. Easiest way to think of it is it's a combination of competitive intelligence, how to know what your competitors are doing, but then how to turn that into messaging, into content, into insights for your sales, your revenue, your whole organization, so that everyone knows how to compete and win and has the right message. So this topic, how to compete and win as a team, I 100% believe the way that you compete and what I'm going to show you today is how to do that properly as a team. A little bit about me. I'm from Newfoundland, which is like the furthest province, east coast of Canada. I moved to Toronto, Ontario about 10 years ago, and just last year moved to Collingwood. So Collingwood's a town of about 20,000 people in Ontario, a nice ski town. It's the joys of remote work. So I've been in B2B SaaS for about 10 years, probably a little bit more than that now. And most of that time has been in product marketing. So I started product marketing teams at Uberflip, at Chili Piper, and then I'm getting to start the product marketing team at Clue as well. And for anyone who wants to connect with me either after today, or if you're interested in anything I said in this presentation, hit me up on LinkedIn. So when I started this presentation, a member of our team, Adam, he big sports fan, he was like, Jason, you gotta make a comparison between the old way of coaching, the old way of teamwork, the Bobby Knight style of one directional, telling people what to do, versus the way that we look at team play today. And it's teams like the Golden State Warriors, or coaches like Steve Kerr. And it's this two-way, it's very much like everyone has a say on the team. It is very much all the team comes together and has input on how you go and you win against the competition. And that is very much how companies today can compete too. I think it's really interesting because a lot of what you're probably going to hear talked about today, and when we think about your message in the market, a lot of times, myself having worked in a lot of different marketing teams, you're thinking about it in terms of what messaging is on the website, what messaging is in ads, what are we saying in our content, all that stuff. But when you think about the fact that your sales team, your revenue team, sales, CS, account management, SDRs, they are out delivering your message. They're literally the mouthpiece. Like they're where the rubber meets the road in terms of delivering your message to people in conversations. SDRs make about 40 calls a day. AEs are on the phone for 4 to 5 hours per day. Same thing with CSMs and your account managers. And then the sales rep, an average sales rep sends about 36 emails a day. So they're out there, they're delivering a message and delivering it to people who are engaged, attentive. But the question is, are they delivering the right one? On average, sellers lose about 28% of their deals to competitors. So if you can hone in on really refining and nailing it with the message that they're delivering, there's a lot of upside to be able to kind of whittle down that 28% and win more of those competitive deals. So what I'm going to show in this presentation today, this is really trying to get tactical in this presentation today and giving you like a framework and a way to think about how you can go away and start to, as a team, compete and win. So start with talking about intel collection, how you do that as a team sport, how to think about turning intel into something useful for your sales team, into messaging, and a mental model that you can use to kind of think about how to look through all the information and kind of process that. Delivering clear messaging. How do you deliver clear messaging to your team and give them concise and impactful messaging that they can go out and use to compete? And then reviewing team performance to create this kind of full feedback loop of how you go out and compete and win as a team. All right, so let's start with the intel collection side. So intel collection, right? And everything I'm going to talk about today, this is not something you need that like I'm kind of distilling it down to things that you can think about and go away and implement, whether you have a tool like a Clue or whatever, or if you're doing it all manually. So this is not meant to be something you need to go out necessarily today buy a tool for. So intel collection is a team sport. When we think about intel collection today, you might think that it's definitely what it's not is a back office responsibility where it's just one person's job, right? Team intel collection is 100% everyone's job. You want to create an environment and a program where everyone's encouraged to share good intel about your competitors. And there's multiple ways to get it. So when you're thinking about how to get your team to contribute intel and tell you what competitors are doing, a few key ways that you could start doing today, like take away and run with. One is email forward. So if you want to set up your own inbox, right? Or if you just want to get them to forward those emails to you and you have like a label that you automatically filter it into, anytime they get an interesting response from a prospect where they're saying, I'm hearing this from a competitor, or, how do you differ in this sort of way? Or we've decided to go with a XYZ competitor for XYZ reason. Anytime they get any good intel on a competitor, good insight, you want them to forward that along to you. Slack, if today you don't have a good CI channel in Slack, set that up. That is one thing that you can do immediately. And it's a central, teams are living in Slack all day. It's a central place where they can drop insights and intel about your competition and have good conversations around it and start that conversation about competition. Gong, or if you have Chorus or any type of call recording tool. I love Gong, like we use Gong, and I've used Gong in the last couple of companies. But being able to actually set up a competitor keyword and track that, and then you can automatically pipe that into Slack so that you could just have a real time, you're getting snippets where your competitors are mentioned. And then Salesforce. You need to have good Salesforce data or CRM data, depending on what you're using. And you want to make sure that you're capturing competitive information on every deal. And it's a challenge, but like one of the things you want to make sure, a couple of the things you want to make sure you're collecting, and you want to make sure your competitive data is accurate, which is always a challenge to do. But some of the things you want to make sure you're capturing is, one is incumbent, something people don't think about all that often, but when you're in an opportunity with a deal, you want to know who they're currently using today. Now, if they're manual, it might be something like a spreadsheet, but if they currently have a solution, then that's a competitive opportunity. Knowing who the main competitors are in that deal, like who are you up against really? And when you lose a deal, knowing who the deal winner actually was. All of this is going to be important when you're trying to measure things like win rates against your competitors. And then another one is win-loss notes. And this is where you might have a full win-loss program, and that's a whole other topic completely. Super valuable thing to do. But in terms of having your reps being able to provide good win-loss notes and some insight every time that they're either winning or losing a deal is going to come in handy for sure. And all of that is good intel for you. You want to reward the people and recognize the people that share. You want to find your glue people like Andre Iguodala. And so our competitive enablement manager, Brandon, he is constantly giving shout outs to people who are contributing intel, who are helping us keep tabs on what's happening in the market. And you can even go so far as to reward them too. I've heard lots of people who have, a monthly reward for the person who's the most, collaborative or contributing the most. Like anything you can do to reward and recognize that type of activity, you definitely want to do that. So after all that, what you've got is you've created this kind of program in your company where good intel is starting to come across your desk, and it's not something that you're out having to find on your own. So then what's a way to think about how you can actually go and curate that intel into something that's actually useful? Right? And what's this idea of curation? Why should I think about curation at all? You don't want to drop intel in the lap of your customer-facing, like go-to-market teams, because it's just noise. It's not going to be useful to them. If anything, it's going to hinder them because it's just giving them raw news. You're not going to drop a blog post or a press release or anything like that because it doesn't have any context. It doesn't tell them why it matters or what to do or what to say. So think of it as like a play. It's one thing to watch the tapes and know what one thing if Steve Kerr's getting his team to watch the tapes of what, the Bulls did in their last few games to know what their offense and their defense is. But if they don't use that to actually make a plan and build out their own offense and defense, it's not going to be any use to them. So that's why it's important to curate intel and actually figure out, okay, what's the insight here? How can we use this to better compete? And so here's a mental model that you can think through today or use to help shape how you have a lot of this intel come across your desk. How can you actually start to think about how to process it and how to actually make it turn it into something useful? So of all the things that come across your desk, there's going to be some stuff that's not relevant. It's like stuff you just want to discard, and that happens. And obviously there's going to be, especially if you're doing things manually, like there's going to be a lot of stuff that's not relevant that comes across your desk. But of the stuff that is, there's going to be things that are important, things that are interesting, and stuff that you want to archive or you want to save. So what's stuff that's important That's going to be urgent competitor news, things like new releases, things that change or impact the way that you position and sell against a competitor. So that's stuff you need to notify those people, your sales, your revenue team. You need to notify them right away and direct them on what to do, what to say. So that's when you need to add why it matters. You need to provide insights around this actual piece of intel and what this update means, and then arm them with what to do and what to say. Then you're just going to drop that back into whatever channel is the most immediate that you use to communicate. So that could be your CI channel in Slack. It could be the sales team Slack channel. It could be an email, like a direct email to them on the day of, or it could be something like a stand-up that you join. But it's something that is important you got to get back to right away. So when that sort of thing is dropped in Slack, you want to hop on it. You want to say, hey, team, we're on top of this. We're going to do some more research, and we'll get back to you. Of the things that are interesting, this is relevant competitive intel. It doesn't need an immediate response. It's not like the team is like, well, what do we do with this? But it's something you want to take more time to analyze, incorporate it into battle cards, right? And you want to incorporate that into a regular cadence on how you update your team. And that could be like an internal newsletter that you're going to send every month, or every week if you have that many competitors, you want to stay on top of it. But it's something where it warrants further analysis. You want to, again, adding the context, the why it matters, what they can do with this. But a lot of times it's incorporating it into a lot of the content you have around competitors currently. And then there's the stuff you just want to archive, the stuff that you want to save. So you don't want to, if something relevant comes across your desk, but it's not something you can action on or utilize today, you don't want to get rid of it. You want to start building your archive of competitive intelligence. So this is where you want to have a Word document. Maybe you want to have an Excel spreadsheet, and you're just going to start keeping track of all these things, because it might come in handy 6 months down the road where you want to go back to this and reference some of this information. So you've created a kind of environment where stuff's coming across your desk constantly, and you have a way to actually go through and think about it and process that information. The next is, how do you turn that into clear messaging for your sales team and deliver it in a way that is concise, to the point? So when you think about it, what does Steve Kerr and a battle card have in common? It's that it's concise, clear delivery of messaging and insights. So Steve Kerr was really good at taking like 8 to 10 different plays and condensing it down into 2 to 3 minutes of actual, being able to explain it to his team in 2 to 3 minutes. And he was also a TV analyst, so he had this skill of taking a lot of information and distilling it down to what his team really needed. That's the point of a battle card. That's the point of your job as, say, a product marketer or someone in CI, is to be able to really distill down and deliver the messaging, things that your sales team needs to do, things that they need to say, things to look out for when they're up against a competitor. So I'm going to go in and walk through some of the things that you should add in a battle card. And all of these, you'll notice it's not like a feature checklist or anything like that. It is stuff that is very specific on things that your team needs to like look for and say and do. So the first is the quick dismiss. And this is essentially arming your team with a quick, whenever they hear a competitor come up on a call or they're asked about a competitor, is a quick kind of 20 to 30 seconds. Here's what to say to quickly deposition that competitor and move on. Next is how to spot competitors. So it's really important, especially like if you're, say, arming your SDR team with their own battle card, it's really important to arm them with how to spot competitors. This might be keywords that people are using. It might be ways that they describe certain capabilities or things about a product. This is stuff that you want to have them keep an ear out for, because you want to know if you're up against a competitor as quickly as possible. And so the faster that they can kind of have that moment where they realize, oh yeah, we're up against this competitor in this deal, then that's the quicker that's the point where your sales rep can start to get strategic about how they're going to deliver a message in a way that depositions a competitor. It's also good too, if you have an SDR, when they're handing that deal off to an account executive, they can tell them, hey, you're up against this competitor or these competitors. It's important. What they say about us and how to respond. So if you're in a competitive deal, you've got to know that your competitors are out there saying things to deposition you, laying their own landmines, things to try to trip you up, or explaining their value in a way that may be unique to them. And so in a lot of that cases, your competitors are telling your prospect things about your company in a way that position them in the best way possible. But those are things that you need to know and arm your team with. Hey, these are the things that you're up against. These are the things that your our competitors are saying about us, and you need to know how to respond to those. So they might be something that a prospect brings up on a call. It's like, hey, competitor X said this about you, or said that you can't really provide this sort of value. And having a rebuttal and a response, a way to handle that objection, but also things to know that they're probably saying, and maybe they're not bringing it up on a call, and they need to be proactive in going out and actually handling that objection. Knowing your key differentiators. So these are things that are uniquely, like value points that are unique to your platform. And so ideally, you want to take these unique, like key differentiators of your platform and overlap them with the needs and what's important to your buyer. We had a podcast the other day, and one of our account executives, Kyan, was on talking about this idea of a value wedge. And it's the value wedge for a sales rep is really finding where buyer need overlaps with your key, the things that are uniquely, the value points that are uniquely different about your platform, and then continuing to drive that home on every call and every email. And that's messaging, right? Like that's messaging that they can deliver every time. It's going to drive home why your solution is best equipped to handle their pains or help them achieve their goals. Questions that your team should ask. So this is stuff that can cast doubt about the competition, questions to ask about that will help kind of frame the problem in a way that your solution is best equipped to solve, and get them to think and try to influence the things that are important to them throughout the sales cycle, that frames, that is more suited to how your platform provides value and where you can help. And then lastly, it's evidence. It's proof, evidence, having those customer stories, things that you can provide to your sales team so that they have actual evidence, things to say, yeah, this is the value we provide, and here are examples, like actual concrete examples about that. So an important part of any competitive enablement program is being able to look back and review team performance and continuously get better. You want to have that feedback loop. You want to create a flywheel where you're constantly improving and getting better at beating the competition. So you want to measure your impact. And when you're thinking about, hey, how are we going to measure this program? This is really where having good, accurate CRM data comes into play. And one of the ways, like you want to reward and recognize your glue people, you really want to make sure the whole team is contributing good intel. And I've seen some people go as far as actually, provide incentives of people who actually, provide good intel in Salesforce. But the whole point is that you can look back and start to measure your performance to see what is our win rate, but not just win rate against key competitors, but also being able to see our sales cycle length. And are we letting deals drag on because it's super competitive, or are we able to really deposition a competitor quickly and close those deals faster? Or do we have to not discount as much anymore because it's stiff competition and we're able to have bigger deal sizes? So all of those things are ways that you can measure the performance of your competitive program and then track over time how it impacts revenue. I love this idea because this is something, again, tying back to the Golden State Warriors. There was a game where Steve Kerr actually let the team coach themselves. And so you can see there, Draymond Green is like drawing up a play. David West was in another clip drawing up a play for the team. And he literally just let them coach themselves, which is really cool because when you really think about it, especially in the NBA, all of these, so many veterans, so many professionals, and there's so much they can learn from each other. And I really love this idea of embracing peer-to-peer coaching on your sales team because there are so many skilled sales reps who are able to help other reps, either ones that are ramping or ones that have maybe not competed against a certain competitor in the past. So by embracing peer-to-peer coaching, and one of the easiest ways to do that is if you have teams that are, again, putting good information into Salesforce and providing good like win-loss notes, not just a pick field, but being able to say, here's some insight around how I won this deal or why I lost this deal. And then you make that available to the team where people can see and who's winning and who's losing deals. Then it provides like a map internally of where your sales reps know, oh, I'm up against this competitor. I can see so-and-so just won a deal or lost a deal against them. I'm going to tap them and try to figure out, what I can take from the way that they approach that deal. So that idea of peer-to-peer coaching, it's a good way to, again, create that feedback loop and get, especially if you're thinking about, I'd imagine a lot of people watching today are on small, some of you are in smaller companies where maybe there's a one product marketer, maybe CI comes down to just you, or it's like a portion of what you do. And so what this will help you do is scale out that program too and allow people to get real-time insights from people on the sales team and not always have to come to you. And then lastly, sales confidence. So this is where sales confidence survey, you do it quarterly, maybe you do it, you might want to do biannually. It depends on how often you want to do it. But it's a chance for you to find out, is the sales team feeling confident? The reps feel confident with what you're arming them with and with the messaging. And that's great because it's again, an indicator of how well your program is performing. But it's a good opportunity for you too to find out who's coming up most often. Like, is who you actually are spending the most time on creating messaging around and all of that, is that actually the competitors that are coming up most often on deals? And so if you could stay on top of that, you might get wind of ones that, hey, we should actually start focusing on this one too. And then also knowing what content is missing, or maybe questions or objections that you haven't armed them to handle. So having a process of getting that feedback and knowing how to continuously make your competitive content better is super important. And that's it. So that's really the whole process, right? So intel collection as a team sport. Right? How, as a team, can you create a program and environment where everyone's contributing intel? How do you go about using the mental model there of turning that intel, how to process it, turn it into something useful, and then how to turn that into clear messaging that you're going to deliver to your team, and then to have the feedback loop and review team performance and really turn this into a program that's always improving. That's it. So yeah, that's my presentation. If anyone has any questions, you want to say hi on LinkedIn or anything, happy to share or talk about competitive enablement.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jason. Guys, post any questions that you have to the questions tab. I'll kick it off with one thing. So, since you're part of Clue, you have insight into like what size companies, well, how big do you have to be for you to, in order for a competitive intelligence program to make sense? Like, if you're one AE, one SDR, and, one marketing person, probably that's an overkill, right? So like, when does it start making sense to go all in?
Do you mean like buying a product or setting up
buying a product and also like spending, consciously thinking about it, as opposed to doing like a 80-20 version of like, yeah, we know like who are the top 7 competitors and more or less this is how we're different,
Yeah. I think there's a number of factors too, because it matters on how many competitors you have, right? How often competitors are coming up in deals. The size of your sales team definitely comes into play too. And so, I think obviously if you're an enterprise company, there is so much more of a need to have a formal, like maybe tech in place to help you scale that program. Whereas say if you're a 50-person startup, you might not need as much tech to be able to help you kind of scale at this program. It might be a little more ad hoc. But I think one of the things that's interesting, and this is something that, I've been able to talk with different analysts about, hey, like, what are you seeing when it comes to CI and like how people are actually running these programs? And majority of companies, especially in smaller companies, the programs are everyone is starting to adopt CI. And like, they're starting to say, hey, you know what, we need to be looking at what our competitors are doing. We need to be strategic in how we message against our competitors, but no one really knows how to run the programs. So they don't know how to go about collecting intel. So what they'll do is they'll just start firing up, say like Google Alerts, and get flooded with information. And then it's more about, I just need to collect everything I can about a competitor. And I think where a lot of people can start is even just with this team approach, like collecting intel from your team, making a system within your company, even if you have like a handful of reps where everyone's contributing intel, you have an active CI channel in Slack or Teams or whatever. And then you're just deliberate about how you actually get insights out of that and then turn that into something useful for the team. So I think like you could have a small sales team, but a battle card's still important. They still need to know what to say against competitors, unless you never come up against competitors and you're always winning. Your win rate's like 100%, right? So I think that would be my answer to that.
Well, thank you. Jarvis is asking, should the competitive strategies and tactics be different if you're selling to SMB versus enterprise? Or does your framework is it dependent on company size?
I would say, obviously where I specialize is B2B. So I think, where I am, the way I was framing even this presentation today is, when you have when your go-to-market is through, again, sales reps who are constantly talking to buyers every day, this is the type of program you need. B2C, a little bit different, but I think, a lot of probably the enablement, the people that you're enabling in B2C is more like you're enabling product teams, you're enabling marketing teams, you're enabling executive teams with insights and around like what's happening with our competitors, what messaging are they using. And so I think you're enabling in B2C probably different teams, whereas sales might not be as big a part of like a B2C go-to-market.
And the final question is about, well, I'm not sure how relevant it is, but let's go with it anyway. What types of client-facing assets do you regularly build for your sales teams? And are they general assets or deal-specific assets?
That is a great question. So I think one of the things that I'm starting to think a lot about now is sales collateral and marketing content. Do they always need to be so different? And so a clear example would be like you have a 2-pager for you versus a competitor. And now you could have a PDF and you could arm your sales team with that. And they constantly have that where it's like, oh, we're up against this deal. Here's a 2-pager that explains why we're different than a competitor. But what you see so much of now is people who have those pages on their website. It's like, it's less about killing 2 birds with 1 stone. It's more about like, hey, the messaging that your sales team delivering about a competitor could be it's also very useful in terms of your message to the market and like creating a web page around you versus the competition. And I'm a big fan of that type of content. But in terms of things that we arm our team with, I think a lot of it does come down to deal specific. Obviously it depends on the size of the deal. So enterprise deals, our team is helping with deal strategy and to build out specific, say, a deck for a competitor. And that's more external facing content, right? Competitive content that's internal is more battle cards and messaging. When it comes to external content, it might be a deck for a prospect that kind of shows the comparison between you and a competitor. It could be a more scalable like PDF document or a deck that your sales team can repurpose. And I would say like in a lot of cases, like that type of content, there's only 1 or 2 pieces that are really competitor specific. And in those cases, if you go above and beyond that, it's going to be something custom that's based on the deal itself.
Awesome. Jason, I appreciate your wisdom. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.